If you do one thing every single day for the next 30 days, your entire relationship with stress, people, and failure will change. Not your circumstances. Your circumstances might stay exactly the same. What changes is you. Picture this. It's 6:47 in the morning, your phone buzzes on the nightstand, and before your feet even touch the floor, your mood for the entire day has already been decided by someone else's message. That's not an accident, that's a habit you were never taught to break. And later in this video, I'm going to show you why the positive thinking advice you've been given your whole life actually makes this worse for most people who try it the obvious way. But first, type the word filter in the comments if you're ready to actually understand why your mind works against you every morning, and stick around because the fix is simpler and stranger than you think. You know the feeling? You wake up already tired even though you slept 8 hours. You open your phone before you even said good morning to yourself, and in the space of 90 seconds you've absorbed a headline about a disaster on the other side of the world, a passive-aggressive text from a coworker, and a photo of someone your age who seems to have life figured out while you're still lying in bed. By the time you're brushing your teeth, your nervous system is already in a low-grade state of alarm, and you haven't even left the house. At work, someone takes credit for something you did, and you smile and say nothing, and that small swallowed injustice sits in your stomach for the rest of the day like a stone. In the evening, you scroll through other people's highlight reels, vacations, promotions, relationships that look effortless, and you feel that quiet, corrosive comparison creeping in, the sense that everyone else got the instruction manual for life and you didn't. None of this is dramatic. That's the problem. It's not one catastrophe wrecking your life. It's 1,000 tiny leaks, your energy, your self-respect, your peace of mind draining out through cracks so small you've stopped noticing them. You end most days not defeated by anything specific, just depleted, and you can't quite say why. Almost 2,000 years ago, a Roman slave named Epictetus taught something that modern psychology has spent the last few decades rediscovering with new vocabulary. He said, in essence, that people are disturbed not by events themselves, but by the opinions they form about those events. The traffic jam doesn't ruin your morning, your judgment that the traffic jam is a catastrophe does. The rude coworker doesn't steal your peace, your decision to hand it to them does. This isn't a throwaway inspirational line. It's a mechanical description of how suffering actually works, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Here is the core idea for this entire video, and I want you to hold on to it, because everything else builds on this one sentence. Most of your daily suffering comes from reacting to things that were never actually yours to control. That's it. That's the whole engine. Not think positive. Not manifest good vibes. Just this before you react to anything. Ask whether it belongs to you or not. Let's be precise about what this does not mean, because this is where most people get it wrong and quit before it works. It does not mean you stop caring. It does not mean you become passive, numb, or indifferent to injustice. And it is not an excuse to avoid difficult conversations or hard work. A stoic filter is not a shrug. It's a scalpel. You use it to cut away the reactions that cost you energy for no return, so you have more energy left for the things that actually deserve it. Your work, your relationships, your integrity. This is the opposite of the culture we actually live in, which rewards the fastest, loudest, most public reaction to everything. Post a hot take immediately, respond to the text within minutes, or it means something. Have an opinion on every news story within the hour it breaks. We have built an entire economy around punishing the pause. The filter habit is a quiet rebellion against that economy. And it starts with one question you ask yourself dozens of times a day. Is this in my control or not? Let's start where this shows up first, because it shows up before you've even gotten out of bed. Picture your alarm going off, and instead of getting up, you reach for your phone. In the first 10 minutes of consciousness, your brain, which is at its most suggestible right after sleep, gets handed a stream of information you did not choose and cannot control. A headline about inflation. A notification that someone liked a photo you posted 3 days ago, which somehow makes you check who else liked it and whether an ex-friend or an ex-partner is in that list. A work email that technically could have waited until 9. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor who ruled the most powerful empire on earth and still found time to write himself nightly reminders, used to tell himself something like this before he got up each day. People will be ungrateful, arrogant, and difficult, and that's simply what today will contain, so don't be surprised by it. And don't let it own your morning before it's even started. He wasn't being pessimistic, he was inoculating himself. This connects to something psychologists call the mere exposure effect combined with what's known as attentional priming. Whatever your mind processes first in a given window tends to color everything that follows in that same window, because your brain is pattern matching against the most recent input it has. If the first input of your day is chaos you didn't choose, your brain quietly assumes the day itself is chaos, and it starts scanning for more evidence to confirm that. You are not lazy, you are not broken, you are running the exact program your inputs handed you. So here's the reframe. Your morning isn't ruined by outside forces, it's ruined by which forces you let go first. The action for today is almost embarrassingly small. For the first 10 minutes after you wake up, the phone stays face down, untouched. Not forever, just first. You get to decide what enters your mind before the world decides for you. And that single 10-minute boundary will do more for your entire day than almost anything else on this list. Now here's a question worth sitting with for a second. How much of your day, right now, today, is actually spent reacting to other people's opinions of you rather than living according to your own? Most people can't answer that honestly, because the habit is invisible from the inside. That question leads straight into the next layer, and this one runs deeper than notifications. This is about other people's opinions of you and how much unpaid rent they're living in your head. Think about the last time you agonized over a text message before sending it, rereading it 4 times, wondering if it sounded too cold or too eager, or the meeting where you had a good idea but didn't say it because you pictured the face someone might make, or the outfit you didn't wear, the vacation photo you didn't post, the opinion you swallowed at dinner because you didn't want to be that person. You are constantly editing yourself for an audience that most of the time is barely paying attention to you at all. Seneca, writing letters to his friend Lucilius from what was essentially a philosophical retirement, warned against living according to the opinion of the crowd, saying that most people don't actually live, they simply prepare to live, endlessly adjusting themselves for approval they'll chase forever and never quite catch. Psychologists have a name for the exact mechanism behind this. It's called the spotlight effect, and it's one of the most well-documented biases in social psychology. It describes our tendency to dramatically overestimate how much other people notice and remember our appearance, our mistakes, and our choices because we are the center of our own experience and mistakenly assume we're the center of everyone else's too. That coworker who saw you trip in the hallway thought about it for maybe 4 seconds before returning to whatever crisis was happening in their own head. You've thought about it for 4 years. Here's the reframe, and it should feel like relief, not shame. You were never actually being watched as closely as it felt. You were the only one holding the spotlight, and you can put it down anytime you want. The action today is to make one small choice: send the text without rereading it a 5th time, wear the thing, say the honest thing in the meeting purely because it's true to you, and notice, really notice, how little the world actually reacts. The pattern so far has been about protecting your peace from noise and from other people's imagined judgment. But there's a version of this that's much harder to swallow, and it's the one most self-help content quietly avoids. Because it doesn't feel good in the moment, it's about how you treat your own failures and setbacks. Picture the rejection email, the project that fell apart despite your best work, the relationship that ended and left you replaying every conversation, hunting for the exact sentence where it went wrong. Most people respond to setbacks in one of 2 equally unhelpful ways. Either they spiral into self-blame that goes far beyond what's useful, turning "I made a mistake" into "I am a mistake," or they build an elaborate story about how it was all someone else's fault, which feels better for about a day and then quietly rots into bitterness. Marcus Aurelius had a strange, almost blunt way of handling obstacles. He treated them as raw material. Fire, he wrote, takes whatever is thrown into it and turns it into more fire. A disciplined mind, he believed, does the same thing with adversity. It doesn't waste energy wishing the obstacle away. It simply asks what can be built from what's now in front of it. This connects to a well-established idea in psychology called cognitive reappraisal, the practice of consciously reinterpreting an emotionally difficult event to change its impact on you, not by lying to yourself about what happened, but by choosing which true thing about it you focus on. The rejection was real, the pain was real, and it's also true that the rejection contains information you didn't have yesterday. Both facts exist at the same time. You get to choose which one you build your next move around. Here's the reframe. A setback is not proof that you are failing at life. It's proof that you are attempting something that matters enough to have stakes. People who never fail at anything are usually people who never tried anything worth the risk. The action for today is to take one recent setback, something still a little tender, and write down in one sentence the single useful thing it taught you. Not to make it hurt less, to make it worth something. Here's the part most people skip past. And it's the part I actually want you to slow down for, because this is where the whole video stops being self-help and starts being something closer to armor. If you've made it this far, you already think differently than most people who click on a video like this and bail after the first 2 minutes. You're the kind of person who actually follows an idea through instead of just feeling good about the title for 30 seconds. So do one thing for me right now. Hit like on this video. Not because I need it, because the algorithm rewards videos people actually finish, and there's someone scrolling past this exact video right now who needs it in their feed today. That's the only ask, just that one tap. Now, remember what I said at the very beginning, that the positive thinking advice you've been given your whole life actually backfires for most people who try it the obvious way? We're about to get into exactly why, and it's the sharpest idea in this entire video. So let's talk about suffering itself. Not the small daily frictions, but the real weight, grief, chronic stress, the kind of pain that doesn't resolve in a week. This is where just think positive quietly fails people, and it's worth understanding exactly why. When you're in real pain and someone tells you to just focus on the good, your mind doesn't believe it because it can sense the gap between how you actually feel and the feeling you're being told to perform. That gap has a name in psychology: cognitive dissonance, the mental friction that builds when your actual internal state and your outward expression don't match. And dissonance doesn't just sit there quietly, it actively generates more stress while your mind tries to resolve the mismatch. This is why forced positivity so often leaves people more exhausted, not less. Seneca lived through exile, the deaths of people close to him, and eventually a forced suicide ordered by an emperor he had once tutored. And nowhere in his letters does he tell his friends to pretend pain isn't there. Instead, he tells them something closer to this, that the obstacle itself can become the way forward, that a difficulty you actually face becomes fuel, while a difficulty you deny just becomes weight you drag behind you, invisible to everyone but you. This is the real Stoic move, and it's almost never how the philosophy gets marketed. It's not suppression, it's transformation. You don't skip the pain, you metabolize it. The reframe here matters, so read it twice if you have to. Feeling something fully is not weakness, and it is not the opposite of strength. It is the raw material strength is made from. People who look calm under pressure aren't people who felt nothing. They're people who felt everything and decided what to do with it anyway. The action for today is small but honest. Instead of telling yourself to stay positive about whatever is actually hurting right now, tell yourself the truth about it in one sentence, out loud or on paper, and then ask what one useful action that truth points you toward. Now for the sharpest one, the idea most people scroll past their entire lives without ever really sitting with your own mortality, and what it does to how you spend your Tuesday afternoons. This sounds heavy, and it is, but stay with me because this is where the whole video pays off. The Stoics practice something called memento mori. Remember that you will die, not as a morbid obsession, but as a daily filter more powerful than every other one combined. Marcus Aurelius, ruling an empire, facing wars and plagues, reportedly kept a version of this thought close at hand every single day, that you could leave this life right now. And that fact should shape how you act, think, and speak today, not with dread, but with clarity about what actually matters. Here's the psychological mechanism underneath this, and it's real and well documented. It's related to what's called terror management theory, which describes how awareness of mortality, when avoided and suppressed, tends to make people cling harder to shallow status. markers, approval, and distraction, because those things offer the illusion of permanence. But when mortality is faced directly instead of avoided, something different happens. Priorities sharpen instead of scatter. This is why people who survive near-death experiences so often report the same thing afterward. Not fear, but clarity, an almost brutal ability to see which arguments, which grudges, which scrolling sessions were never worth the time. You don't need a near-death experience to borrow that clarity. You just need to stop avoiding the sword. Here's the reframe, and it's the one this whole video has been building toward. Thinking about death isn't depressing. Avoiding the sword of death is what's depressing, because it's what keeps you spending your one finite, non-negotiable supply of days on things that don't matter to you at all. The action for today is uncomfortable on purpose. Ask yourself, if this were one of your last 100 days, what would you stop tolerating immediately? Then stop tolerating it. And here's the paradox that ties every single one of these together. The thing I promised you back at the very start of this video, the twist that makes the obvious version of positive thinking backfire for most people. Positive thinking, the version sold to you in most self-help content, asks you to control how you feel. Force the good mood, manufacture the gratitude. Override the discomfort with willpower and affirmations. And it fails constantly, for almost everyone. Because feelings are not actually in your control. You cannot will yourself into calm the way you will yourself into standing up out of a chair. But your response to a feeling, your next action, regardless of how you feel, that is entirely in your control every single time, with no exceptions. The filter habit doesn't ask you to control your emotions. It asks you to stop confusing your emotions with your actions, because the moment you separate those two things, the pressure to feel good disappears completely, and what's left is something far more durable, the freedom to act well regardless of how you feel in any given moment. That's the paradox. The people who look the most emotionally in control are usually not people who feel less. They're people who stopped needing to control feeling at all, because they found something more reliable to hold on to their own next action. That's not suppression, that's not positivity. That's freedom, and it was available to you this entire time. Hiding underneath a piece of advice that never quite worked because it was aimed at the wrong target. Picture who you are in 6 months if this actually sticks. You wake up and your phone stays face down for the first 10 minutes, not because you're forcing discipline through gritted teeth, but because it simply doesn't occur to you to reach for it anymore. The urge has gone quiet. You walk into a room where someone is clearly annoyed with you, and you notice the old tightness in your chest arrive on schedule. And then, a beat later, you notice it pass, because you're no longer asking whether their mood belongs to you. It doesn't. You get the rejection, the hard news, the setback that used to take you out for a week, and it still stings. It should still sting. You're not a robot, but you're back to moving within the hour instead of within the months, because you've stopped confusing the sting with the verdict. You say the honest thing in the meeting, you wear the thing, you send the text without the 5th reread. None of this makes the world softer. Your coworkers are still occasionally difficult. The news is still occasionally bad. Rejection still occasionally finds you. Because that's simply what living in the world involves, at every level, for everyone, always. What's different is not the weather around you, it's the roof over your head. The chaos doesn't disappear. Your relationship to the chaos does. You become someone who is disturbed far less often. Not because less happens to you, but because you've stopped handing your peace to things that were never actually yours to control in the first place. So here's your challenge, and I want you to actually do this, not just nod along and close the tab. For the next 7 days, every single time you catch yourself reacting to a text, a comment, a setback, a bad morning, pause for 3 seconds and ask one question: is this in my control or not? That's the whole practice. No app, no course, no 30-day transformation program. Just one sentence. Ask honestly, over and over, until it becomes the quiet architecture behind everything you do. Remember this line, because it's the one to keep. You are not disturbed by what happens to you. You are disturbed by what you decide it means. Comment the word filter below right now. Boast to luck in the challenge publicly, and because it genuinely helps this video reach someone else who needs to hear it today. And if you want more of this stoic philosophy translated into something you can actually use on a Tuesday, subscribe, because this channel is built entirely around that one idea. Thank you for staying to the end. Filter first, react second.